Cool shirt, huh? Manual mode. Only. Alright, let's do the intro. Hi, my name is Tak-Kun and welcome back to How To Camera, the YouTube channel where I show you how to camera. Today's episode is going to be on megapixels. What are they? And what does more megapixels mean for you? Stick around. Let's start by defining a megapixel. And a megapixel is essentially a unit, like kilograms. It's 1,000 grams. Well, megapixel is 1,000,000 pixels. So a 16 megapixel camera has 16 million pixels on the sensor. But what's a pixel? Well, if you know about a pixel on, say, an image or a video game or a TV, you have a basic idea. It's the little squares that make up the image that you're seeing. Pixels in the context of a camera refer to the little squares that make up the entire sensor. They're also known as photosites. And those photosites are what's receiving the information that's given to it from the light that's coming in from outside. Another way to think about megapixels is through a length times height, a resolution, the same way you would if you were looking at monitors or television. Some number across by some number the height of. For example, a 24 megapixel camera is most likely to have 6,000 by 4,000 pixels. Now you might think intuitively that more megapixels mean better camera. That's actually only true to an extent. You see, what high megapixel cameras allow you to do is enlarge the image, to blow up the image many times over, like you would if you were to have your images put on a magazine. Or crop in on an image, to cut out a section of a photo and then enlarge that little section. In both cases, what you are doing is making the pixels of the image larger and more apparent. And if they get too big, you might get an image that's pixelated. A pixelated image is an image in which the pixels are too apparent, those little squares that make up the images. And because they're more apparent, you get less detail and generally a poorer quality image. The reason why you would want to do that with a higher megapixel camera is because the pixels are smaller. This requires a little bit of math. If you have two sensors, they're both the same size, one has 42 megapixels and the other one has just 12.2 megapixels, who has smaller pixels? The one with the 42 megapixels. Because those pixels are crammed in there. They're smaller in order to accommodate each other, in order for them all to fit. On a 12.2 megapixel camera, those pixels can breathe a little more. They're larger, resulting in, well, an image with larger pixels. While the other sensor is going to give you an image with smaller pixels. That means those images that came from that camera can be cropped in or blown up further, since those pixels were smaller to begin with. Now some examples of higher megapixel cameras include the A7R II with 42.4 megapixels, to its older brother the A7R IV with 61 megapixels, all the way up to a ludicrous 400 megapixels out of the Hasselblad H60-400C. That's a mouthful. Now the Hasselblad camera is actually a medium format camera. It's another format that I didn't go over in the format video. If you're curious, I'll leave a link down there so you can do a little research on your own. However, if you don't intend to have your photos printed or you don't want to crop in on your images too much to begin with, you don't need a high megapixel camera. And it's worth noting that unless you're buying an older high megapixel camera, if you're buying a new one, they're going to cost you at least $2,000. Fact of the matter is you don't need a high megapixel camera if you're just doing YouTube videos or if you're shooting photos for your social media page. Generally, the people who do need high megapixel cameras are people who are landscape photographers, or architecture photographers, or fashion photographers. And it's not to say that cameras with fewer megapixels can't be printed. In fact, cameras with 24 megapixels can have their images printed to a fairly large amount. If you need any more indication as to how kind of irrelevant megapixels are to beginners, I'm shooting this on an A7S II with just 12.2 megapixels. And how does this look? I think it looks pretty good. Now that concludes the episode on megapixels. I was originally planning to put this episode along with the sensor video because they kind of have connecting tissue. But I ultimately decided against it because that would have made a video that's too long. And I want to make these videos a digestible length so it doesn't feel like a lecture. But I hope you guys enjoyed, hope you guys liked, hope you guys learned something. If you did, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any questions, you have any corrections for me, leave them down there in the comments. If they're worthwhile, I'll pin them. If they're not, better luck next time. Bye!